Welcome to Call to Healing. We are two mental health practitioners on different parts of our professional journeys come together to have conversations our training left out. From cultural identity to white supremacy in our field, we're showing up despite it to spite it.
Welcome to the third episode of Call to Healing. I'm Blanca. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Nevada.
And I'm Kasera Diet, Dr. Kasera Diet, she, her, licensed clinical psychologist in Massachusetts. And we acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Pawtucket, New and Southern Peyote people, and we pay our respect to our others, both past and present, who have stewarded this land for generations. If you're joining us for this third time, welcome back. And if you're joining us for the first time, over the last couple episodes, we've been talking about us, who we are, how we got here. Last episode, we talked about my experience in grad school. And today we're going to be talking about Blanca's experience. So, same trials, tribulations, highs, lows, transformations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as we do want to add a little bit of context so you know where we're at. So while we're recording this episode, it's been about a week since the wildfires have been raging in the LA area. So we've lost at least 24 people, and the fires still continue. And these are some of the most destructive in LA's history, and it really highlights the necessity for the wisdom of the people who are stewards of this land. So yeah, that's some context for where our hearts and minds are at today.
Yes, so we're just gonna pause, sit with that for just a quick second. And transition. So today's conversation is going to look a little bit different than our last episode. Blanca and I, we usually chat before we start recording, and we were just reminding one another of the structure for today, and you expressed some concerns about our episode structure. And I'm wondering, can you tell the listeners kind of what your concerns were?
Yeah. So I don't know. I was just thinking about the trajectory. And I mean, I think recording a podcast, everyone feels like they have something to say in a podcast, right? And so we have been really taking our time and being really intentional with this show because we want to do it right and we want it to last. And in that spirit, I was just thinking, like, am I trying to get too personal in this episode? Is this some kind of trauma response? Who wants to hear this? And so I came to Kasera this morning being like, no, you know what? Forget it. Let's just do the episode with like some general questions about grad school, and the whole experience of becoming a mental health therapist or a mental health practitioner. And Kasera was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, well, I asked that because I know that, like, you've had a lot of feelings about talking about this experience. Grad school was more than rough for you, and even though, as I said this to you, like, in many ways, I had my own negative experiences, I feel like there was a lot of counterbalancing for me, um, that wasn't necessarily a part of your experience, and
Yeah.
that, like, our whole reason for doing this podcast was because we didn't want it to be the same things you hear from everybody else, right? Like,
Right.
a lot of people can talk about what it's like to go to grad school, um, to be a clinician, and that that experience, though, like the depth of it and the personal nature of it, is not something that you always hear about. And we wanted to give voice to that. And maybe in doing so, it's similar to somebody else's story, or maybe exactly like someone else's story or your story, whoever is listening. And it's always been important to me to give light to these things that we just accept as
Mm-hmm.
okay, and that
Mm-hmm.
people in our field just perpetuate as okay when they're really
Mhm.
not. They're
Mhm.
really not. And so we want to make sure to tell you these things. Not only maybe you're curious about it, but maybe this applies to somebody who is listening. So, with that said, anything else you want to add?
Well, I mean, I think as you're talking, the other thing that comes up is, this is kind of what happens when you are in a, right, our whole field, what's the word I'm looking for? It's steeped in white supremacy because everything is. And I think a lot of my negative experience or my experience in school is because I was trying to show up as my full self under white supremacy. Um, so I think that's why it's so, I mean, I guess we're back to why this is so important and so relevant. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, I'm wondering if you could remind listeners just of your arrival at graduate school. So we covered this in our first episode a little bit, but just to recap to situate everybody.
Yeah. So, I have a master's in human sexuality education, which is where I met Kasera in 2011, and then sometime around 2017 to 2018, I was really questioning my career. I'd done great things, but I thought I wanted to do something a little bit differently, so something a little different. So I went back to when I was 18 years old. What I wanted to do was be a therapist. I wasn't super into the psychology field, but I didn't know there were other ways to be a therapist. So I started looking in and asking around. And as it turns out, the marriage and family therapy program in my hometown, where I had just moved back to after a personally traumatic few years in other cities, was allegedly one of the best. Highly, highly recommended by some folks who were marriage and family therapists, and had a degree in sexuality as well. So they were in the field, really highly recommended. And so I decided to apply and I got in. And I started my second master's program, marriage and family therapy, in September 2019. So there's some timeline context for you there. And I specifically chose, and I think this matters a lot, right? There's a few reasons why I felt like all of this aligned. One, it was in my hometown, and I was about to be living with my parents again for the first time in a long time. I needed a reset, I needed the support. It also made it a more affordable program to attend. Um, the school itself touts itself as the most diverse campus in the United States. Okay, that's checking some boxes for me, for better or worse. Um, and then I really appreciated that the field of marriage and family therapy was systemic in nature. And in my, little brain at the time, I thought, great, this means that there's also going to be a lot of space to discuss systems of oppression and other systemic factors, right? Because systems aren't just your families, it's also everything else. So I'm thinking most diverse campus, a systemic lens, great. Like this is going to be the right fit for me. And of course, like any other program, they're talking about how important diversity is, blah, blah, blah. My interview day, I think probably was the first problem. I did note, it was group interviews, and I did note to the director, hey, I took a look at the facts and figures you publish for the demographics of your program, and I noticed that you discuss a lot about how important diversity and inclusion is to you. However, I see that the program is majority white. Um, I don't even remember her answer. To be honest, it wasn't great. In another, with another professor, I asked how they address issues of diversity, and his answer to me was, this was a white man, was, well, we look for diversity of experience. And I'm like, okay, so you're choosing to change the meaning here of diversity to something that you feel comfortable with, but fine. This man ended up being like one of the only safer places in the whole program, but I would not have thought of that to begin with. But anyway, that was that. I got into the program, nothing crazy, not very diverse at all. Like, I don't really want to count, but I want to say somewhere out of between 20 to 27 students, five ish were students of color, myself included, but I don't recall. It's been a long time and I'm not going to sit here and try to remember, right? So, but definitely a minority status for sure, despite being a primarily, diverse serving institution. The first major problem I came across was, and it's interesting how the story has changed even in my own head. When I tell the story, I say that my quip for the story is I got in trouble for saying the A in LGBTQIA doesn't stand for ally. But it actually happened a little bit differently. We were in class, the LGBTQIA chapter or PowerPoint slide was coming up, and I noticed she wrote asexual slash ally. And so I nudged my friend next to me, who was white, and I pointed and just made like a question face. The professor, who's a white woman, clocked this, which is very embarrassing. My bad. And she was like, "What? What's wrong?" And my friend, who's white, spoke up and said, "Oh, well, we were just curious about the inclusion of ally in LGBTQIA." So it wasn't actually me who said it, right? After this, there was an uproar, primarily led by the professor,
Hmm.
which is just kind of all about how she's an ally and she works with primarily LGBTQ people. And if she wants to include herself in the acronym, she can. And I don't remember like the actual chain of events, but I remember, being the one who continued with the conversation. I was like, oh, well, typically as non marginalized people, we don't want to put ourselves under this, right? Because it's not about us, right? As if you are an ally to LGBTQ folks, you're not going to get fired for having a picture of yourself kissing your partner in your Facebook, right? Like, yes, gender or marriage equality, we have marriage equality, but that doesn't mean that people aren't going to be discriminated against for being married, right? Just all the talking points, the soft, gentle talking points, we give white folks so they don't feel attacked. But really, the whole class attacked me about this. Certain people more than others, but those people are irrelevant. Um, to the point where at the end of class, like I was asked to see the professor for a meeting, which I genuinely thought was to be supportive
Hmm.
because of how the class jumped on me for backing up this fact, which even the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy in their LGBTQIA guide define A as asexual, not as ally,
Mhm.
for backing up that claim. And then I show up to that meeting and it is about how I am racist to white people. It's about how I am curt because after class I sent an email and I said, please consider this for your classes. I admit it was a short email. I just didn't think I needed to engage in a bunch of pleasantries when I'm just sharing a resource. And it was another very soft, very direct, but soft article from, God, what is that website that it was a great website with feminist education.
If you remember
No.
it, we can come back to it.
Okay, but it was
Yeah.
it was a solid resource that was
Mhm.
just like why the A doesn't stand for ally. She said it was curt, again, racist to white people, racist to her specifically because she was a white woman. And she said that she thought this was true because I got along well with the white male professor and the black male professor. I was told I would not be a good therapist because I hate white people. And this was all just because of that. There was an interaction earlier with this same professor where she was calling um, AIDS HIV 3.
Mm,
And at this time, I have given people positive HIV results. Like I've been trained in conducting HIV exams and giving results. And I hadn't done it in a few years at that point. So I thought maybe the literature changed and I just didn't know. And so on a break, I said, "Hey, I'm curious, like, can you point me in the direction of this? Because I want to be up to date." And she kind of stuttered and got uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take the hint. And I was like, okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll look it up myself. No problem. In that meeting, she brings it up and she said, well, you said, well, I'll look it up.
mm,
And she made this like exaggerated like movement, which I don't talk like that. So that was really weird. In this whole meeting, I said something about, when she was saying I was being racist to her because she was a white woman. I don't recall how I did it, but I pointed out that I was like, maybe the one being racist here is you because I'm the person of color in the situation. And I asked her something about that, and I swear to God, Cassandra, I was not in my body because I do not remember her answer.
mm,
I I do not remember what she said. I just remember coming back and her saying, I don't see color. And I said, she said, does that answer your question? And I said something like, well, I think it was just mostly a rhetorical question. It all wrapped up all cute with a pretty bow, especially after I started saying, I think maybe the problem is I'm the one experiencing racism here.
mm,
There was a black male professor there who said nothing and did nothing. He just sat there like this the entire time, didn't say a word. There was a white female professor who was my advisor, who was a whole other thing that I'm just not even going to get into. But she was being blatantly rude to me. I had never met her, but she was my advisor. It was a round table and I couldn't see her directly, but I could catch her movements and she would go or like grab a notepad and pretend to write something and show it to the professor next to her
mm.
while like I was saying, well, maybe I'm the one that's experiencing discrimination and all this stuff. This was 6 weeks into the start of the program. And it really only got worse from there.
Um, yeah, so before we kind of talk about what happened, like what got worse,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm wondering about the pushback from your classmates. And I remember we talked about this at the time that it happened, right? But like, what were they doing? What were they saying?
They were saying stuff like, well, if she's an ally, let her be an ally, which I remember being flabbergasted by because I'm
Mm,
like, who? No one is saying anything against allies. I'm simply saying that the A in LGBTQIA is not for ally.
mhm,
Um, I can't recall the rest, like any of the specific stuff, but it was all very much all lives matter, all voices matter, allies
mhm,
are important,
mhm. Which is
and
so
the
interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just it's interesting because it's a centering,
Right,
right, of a group of people who have no place in that
right,
acronym, right? That like
right.
it is literally the epitome of whiteness and white supremacy to be like, I need to be at the center of this. And so I'm going to change a well known terminology to be something that includes and centers me.
Yes,
And that was
yeah.
then being reinforced by your classmates and their pushback.
Yes, yes. Which some folks were queer, but most weren't. Like
Mm,
most marginalizations, probably the most present marginalization, the most common is gender.
Mm,
The program was the vast majority cis women. Um, yeah,
mhm,
cis white women.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, so that was just like 6 weeks. That was 6 weeks, and it got worse. Mostly, yeah, with the classmates, I felt pretty alienated. I felt like everything I said they took as an attack, which I thought was really interesting because I also heard someone tell me that there was someone who thought that every time they spoke up that I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard, which
mm,
I thought was really interesting because I actually am a pretty active listener in class, especially when my classmates are sharing. And um, even if I absolutely, the most that'll happen if I completely disagree is I just won't nod along and I might share something. But this particular person who said it, I remember who they are, I remember everything. And I never, ever, ever thought that. So I'm just so, there was just this perception that just got away that I think everything everyone says is wrong. There was also at some point a privilege walk, and someone said, I'm worried about being shamed for being rich,
mm. Can you
which is
explain to people what you mean by that?
a
Privilege
privilege
walk?
walk.
Mhm,
Um, there's all kinds of different ways to do it, but in this particular case, it's where everyone starts out in a circle and then certain privileges and marginalizations are read out loud. And if you have that privilege, you move in closer to the circle. And if you have that marginalization, you move further. And it's supposed to illustrate how we don't all start essentially from zero, more or less. So, I mean, I think it can be helpful as definitely as a one on one, you know. But in our class, it was specifically very much became a woe is me, I'm going to be shamed for having privilege or being white, which I also thought was really interesting because I I'm I'm old. I was 32 when I went back to school, right? Like I was not freshly out of undergrad or anything like that. And I've worked at the largest whitest nonprofit. So I know how to bring up privilege and oppression among white people. And I made it a point not to mention whiteness. Or excuse me, white people. I talk about whiteness, I talk about white supremacy, and I talk about privilege, right? But I never once sat in that class and said, white people do this, white people do that. But that was what the story became. Um, yeah.
there's an interesting thing that's happening as I'm, like, listening to you, right, which is that I can hear the description of the self-monitoring that you were doing, right?
What do you mean?
Like, you said, "I never said white people, I said whiteness." Or, "I never thought that, and so how did she?" And that, like, sense of hypervigilance about what we're doing or not doing or thinking that happens for folks of color. I feel like I'm hearing it as you tell the story, right? That, like, somehow we are responsible for what does or doesn't happen. And if it doesn't make sense,
Mhm.
well, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, so I don't, right? Like, I don't know if that helps, but, like, I'm hearing the hypervigilance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, 100%. And I still feel that way to this day. I even think about like my final group supervision
Mm,
where someone said something about playing devil's advocate for that football guy who went viral for a speech at a Catholic university. And they were like to be devil's advocate. And I was like, and just, I don't want to get into it, but I pointed out internalized sexism. And even at I left that group supervision and I remember going to therapy and just telling my therapist, like, I don't know why I can't just be quiet.
mm.
I don't know what it is about me that I'm always like upsetting people. But like, anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think that remains. And even when I think about telling this story, I'm like, I don't want to sound like this eternal victim. Like, I'm fine. My private practice is thriving. My clients like me, love me even. I have had no issue getting clients or working as a therapist since then. But I am, I worry about sounding like a victim. Like I'm
Mm.
making myself out to be a victim. And another big part of the trauma is like anything I posted on social media was an issue too, where it would get screenshot and sent around. And I worry about that here. Like I even worry about how this is going to be passed around and said and oh, she's talking about me, or she's talking about me, when I'm like actually trying not to talk about any one person in particular. Like I think there's a lot of systemic issues in the program. And my most of my problems were with the faculty, not with this.
Mm.
Despite the animosity that was there, we were all victims of the same issues, whether we are willing to see that the thing affecting, maybe some people who consider themselves antagonists or my antagonists or whatever, you and I are victims of the same shit. It's just whether or not you're willing to see it or not.
Yeah, you know, I want to hold the worry you have, right, about how this will be received. And also the phrase, like, I don't want to come across as an eternal victim, is again another way in which we oppress ourselves, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because this happened to you, it was done
Mhm.
to you. And even the act of telling the story is about liberation. And I wonder, like, what makes it seem like eternal victim? What does that even mean?
To be honest, this is I mean, it's entirely projecting and entirely fear based, but that some of these people who were in my cohort are going to be like, listen, she's still talking about this, or she's still going on about this.
Sounds
You
like what
know,
white folks say to us all the time.
which is, it's funny that you say that because, like, I said it got worse, and there is something, it does get worse in some ways.
Mm,
Um, I guess I'll just get to that and that'll bring about my point. But like one of the ways it got worse, there's a lot of micro things that happened over and over. But I think the biggest heartbreak for me was like the betrayal of other people of color, but specifically other Latinas that were in the
mm,
program, right? So fast forward through the pandemic, we're fully virtual now. Um, and one quick note for context: the program gathered feedback by halfway through the semester and then at the end of semester by selecting at random certain people and conduct a focus group. The people who were selected are responsible for collecting survey responses anonymously from our class and then also bringing forth comments in the focus group. It was structured this way, it had always been this way. So we're in one of the classes. One of the, I don't remember, but it was about development because this particular professor was talking about a teen. And she's talking about a teen that called her the F slur,
mm,
which you all can pick up. Probably what I'm putting down, I will not be repeating this word. But she's telling the story that this client is calling her Dr. F ass bitch. F slur ass bitch. But she's actually saying the word.
mm,
And I shit you not, she did it like 15 times. Dr. F ass bitch, Dr. F ass bitch, Dr. F ass. And like you could tell that she's trying, frankly, like from a education perspective, what she was trying to get across is you can have a teenager that hates you and still do good work with them, right? Or like something
mm,
along those lines. But she didn't censor that, and it's a slur, y'all. Like, drop all the fuck bombs you want. Like, I don't care. But this is a literal slur. And this happened a day after the focus group, a day or two, just within days of the last focus group. And after the focus group, the people participating get time to collect more comments. One, everybody knows who's participating in this focus group. So people were going to some of the people in the focus group to complain about the slur situation.
Mm.
So someone collected all the responses and sent an email to the evaluator about the slur. Well, the next class, the professor comes on and you can tell she is just distraught, just so anxious, whatever. And then she starts her apology with all the white woman tears you can imagine. I mean, like, I cannot, it was textbook. I'm a good person. I'm trying my best. Apparently, I create a hostile environment. She was reading the feedback word for word.
Mm.
The other doctor, the director of the program, also is there, also trying to, apologize and stuff like that. But this narrative gets created by the two of them that some letter was written and that the purpose of that letter was to get the slur drop-in lady fired, which was not true, but whatever. And then it became that I wrote this letter.
Mm.
Well, first of all, if my reputation is such that when someone gets called out for saying a slur, you think I let it, I'm doing something right. I'm doing something right. But I didn't write that letter. There was no letter. It was feedback that was given through the system that the program itself created. After this, a meeting of mostly white students with a couple of women of color who I thought were my friends was held with the director to try to get me removed from the program. And I think this is the biggest betrayal for me. So someone who went to that meeting was a friend of mine to tell me what was going on in that meeting because people didn't know that she was friendly with me. And she was sending me updates. I know for a fact some of the things that were said in that meeting. Again, led by mostly white people to get me removed from the program because I tried to get this lady fired. In that one, this woman, there was a friend of mine who went, I thought was a friend of mine. She had been to my house, met I thought this was a friend. And she goes in there and fixes her mouth to say to this white woman, yeah, I'm friends with Blanca and her friends, and they only value, get this, dark brown and black voices. But I think so. It brings back to the point that started this whole program. Like, the biggest heartbreak for me is not that a bunch of white people villainized me. That's going to happen. I'm not surprised by it. I make people with privilege uncomfortable because I point out privileges. But that is what really did me. The couple Latinas that one that was supposed to be my friend, like, she would say things to me like she was so glad I was in her life. We had a lot of conversations about body image and stuff. She was so thrilled to have me in her life. And then one day I just became the devil. And funnily enough, shortly after that, she messages me, hey, can I have a consult? I have a client that really wants to talk about systems of oppression.
Mm.
And I said to her, I'm going to suggest that you talk to a professor instead because it seems like you've been misunderstanding the lens at which I come at, because it's my understanding that you're telling people that I hate white people when I'm just talking about having an intersectional lens. So I for what it's worth, I did not help her. I referred her to a professor that can help her with that, because you can't try to get me kicked out of the program for talking about systems of oppression and then come to me when you need help talking about systems of oppression.
Mhm.
Which again was always, that's why I was such a villain, is that in class I would say, well, how does this work with a marginalized person, or how do we manage this theory when it comes to this? Or I'll give you a really good example. In one of my classes, one intervention they taught us for some kind of child thing, I don't remember, is having the child pretend to be a cop and pull over their
Oof.
parent. And I said, lovely. great, this looks like a lovely intervention. How do we apply this with communities who have a perhaps difficult relationship with policing?
Mhm.
That's the kind of shit I would bring up in class. Anyway, there was also, I some meme I shared about white Latina saying brown pride. And this person who, again, I wasn't very close to her. I didn't consider her a friend at all, but I thought she was a co conspirator, at least, or an ally. She was a white Latina. And she
Mhm.
went to the professor and to the director and said that I discriminated against her by posting that meme. And then she then one day texted me, "We need to talk." And I was like, "What?
Mhm.
I I don't have anything to talk to you about. What do we need to talk about?" And she just kept going, and I was like, "Well, like I said in my previous text, I don't have the capacity to have this conversation. You and I don't have anything to talk about." But really, that was the biggest betrayal, I think. Other Latinas who I thought were visibly impacted by the program too, like
Mhm.
just completely throwing me under the bus, and really abandoning me. That was a real betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm aware that, like, one of the things that's always true of social media presence in any way, including podcasting, is that people will always take things in whatever context they want to take them. Um, and I'm aware of that as you tell the story. And they did it at the time too, right? They did it at the
Mhm.
time. And I'm wondering about, like, what that betrayal and everything you went through did to your relationship with visibility. Because I mentioned in the first episode, for those who didn't listen to it, like, one of the things that I was always inspired about with you when we met was your advocacy and social justice, and, like, this part of you that's still very much there. But it was significantly negatively impacted by the program. Mhm.
I mean, it completely shut me down. It completely shut me down, terrified of speaking up or saying anything or asking questions. Um, it just it didn't feel worth it. I felt like it got me nowhere, and it brings me back to, I chose that program for those reasons, right? Including the potential systemic perspective. And it wasn't until after that point, after that program, maybe even a year or two in, after graduating, that I realized the systemic perspective was always me, right? Like, these programs, they're the bare minimum of information you need to become a mental health practitioner. They're steeped in white supremacy. It is all gatekeeping. And I didn't need them to have the systemic perspective. I do think programs need that. I'm not saying programs don't need that, and there's some amazing ones that do. I'm saying I thought that their use of buzzwords meant that I was going to get the kind of education I needed to serve the people I needed to serve. And it turns out that's not the case, because it's steeped in white supremacy, because it's gatekeeping and nothing else. Um, and the intersectional lens was always me, right? The answers aren't going to come from the textbooks. They're not going to come from people who are steeped in the system. I just got to go get the info, and then I got to figure out how to make it work for myself. I don't work with kids, but if I did, how do I take that exercise that is otherwise good for teaching young kids that their parents can also be held accountable for when they have outbursts or when they're not at their best or whatever, and that parents can and should apologize, that don't involve policing, right? Like, I can use my brain to recalibrate that, but um,
Well, I think an important thing about what you're pointing out, and I have historically worked with kids, as well as adults, is like, there are all these little things that happen, little and big, but especially little and repeat things that happen in programs that, like, you either do or you don't, or maybe your senses are there, but you have the sense to pick up
mhm.
something about this isn't right.
Mhm.
but it goes unaddressed. It goes unaddressed. And what you just said reminded me of like when I was learning about play therapy. And there are these basic things that they recommend having in your kit.
Mhm.
And sometimes it includes like a badge or something like that. And what I had to deal with in terms of a black parent and her concerns about, what are the toys that you're using? What do you have in your office? Right? Was very much something that I wasn't prepared for, despite my lived experience, because
Mhm.
the program wasn't teaching me to think critically around what do I
Right.
have in my office? What are kids seeing? What are they
Right.
using? And I point this out only because like you reminded me that like there's so much unlearning that we have to do once we graduate, especially if we care about these kinds of things. Or if not these specific things, making sure that we're actually able to service people in the best way possible.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that like that last point really highlights that.
Yeah, and other things like I remember, I did try to. I switched advisors at a certain point just for safety, just to be safer. But I remember one of my evaluations towards the end was on a scale from 1 to 5, and it was one was like utilize this supervision accordingly, which means you're bringing cases, you're bringing in maybe some countertransference, you're bringing in the real issues, not just bullshitting the supervision. And I got a 5 out of 5 on that one,
Mhm.
which to this day I'm very proud of, because even through my post graduation supervision, I feel like I made really good use of supervision in that way. Um, but then later, I don't remember what the question was. It was something about is self aware about countertransference, and I got a 2 out of 5 on that. And I asked, I'm like, can you help me understand more? Because you literally 3 questions above, you gave me a 5 because I'm bringing to you when I'm having countertransference, but then here you're dinging me for having countertransference.
And for
And
anybody who doesn't know, what is it?
it's when your client or the issues your client is working on is bringing something up for you
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
maybe you need to be aware of so you don't project it onto your client. And the response I got from my advisor at the time was that I let my feminism and my own experience of my culture affect my therapy too much. Which I'm like, what? And what? I mean, it was nonsense, right? Like it was complete and utter nonsense.
What
Like
does
the
that
one,
even mean?
right, right,
Right,
because
you're
you're
supposed to
giving
be a
me a
blank
five.
slate?
Right, you're giving me a 5 out of 5 for utilizing supervision appropriately, which means bringing up when I'm having issues.
Right.
But now you're dinging me for having issues. So what you're saying is it's better that I hide these issues from you
Mhm.
and pretend like they're not happening, because I know there's plenty of therapists, students, and otherwise that are not bringing up these issues. They are keeping it to themselves, and it is affecting the client.
Exactly. Mhm.
So it was just a lot of that. It was just a lot of that. And I did, part of my saving grace was my own therapist. She had actually been through the same program. And while we didn't have the same issues, the system that created the issues I had was the same when she was there, which was many years before I was. Um, so she was my saving grace. You and all my other friends who were already therapists were like, you're going to get through it. You got to get through it. Um, and really, I mean, the allies I made in the program, which I'm not still close to all of them. But for the most part, the people that I got through the program with, a couple of them, I'm still very close to. Um, but yeah, it's been really hard. I'm not involved really in a lot of local therapist circles because I don't want to run into some of my, I don't want to be around them. I don't want to be around some of the people that, and not even my classmates, because again, my issue isn't them. Like the issue was the system, not not the people who were also harmed by the system.
Mhm.
But I don't really want to be around the girls I thought, the women I thought were my ally, that it ended up not being. Like
Mhm.
want to protect myself from that. And so I have avoided a lot of colleague circles. I am not I have a Instagram for my therapy, which everyone's welcome to follow, but I don't post much on it. Right. So, I mean, I guess going back to your question 20 minutes ago, is it really has affected me in a lot of ways, to the point where, that was my biggest pain point
Mhm.
in starting a podcast is like, I'm going to have to be on social media to promote this. And they're going to see it and they're going to share it around and they're going to talk about it. And I'm going to be unsafe again.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the vulnerabilities of visibility exist whether you know your oppressors or not.
Right.
And it can get really unsafe. It can get really unsafe. Um, and people might think, oh, you're making a big deal about it. But just to underscore this point, like when I was talking more about race and racism and issues of oppression on my Instagram initially, I got like DMs with death threats from people that I didn't even know.
Right.
Okay. Um, and so it is like a serious it's not a small thing to do this kind of thing, and I'm very aware of that.
Mm.
And I don't want in there to lose the point. I want to underscore the point that you made that what we really are speaking to is the ways in which our programs perpetuate and reinforce systems of oppression. That these conversations are not necessarily about specific people, they're about institutions and systems. And like, yes, things
Mm.
happen to you with specific people, just like things happen to me with specific people. But ultimately, like, there's an institution that upholds that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And some of us don't get out unscathed.
Yeah.
And as you said, it takes a lot for you to have like tried to make sure that you could be in the best place you could be for the people that you serve.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So ask me if I would do it again.
I mean, I can. Would you like to answer your own question? Would you
I
do
would
it
not.
again?
I wouldn't. I would go somewhere else. Like, yeah. I
Well, it
mean,
depends on what question we're asking, right?
sure.
So, would you do it again could mean go back to that program versus would you do grad school again for this profession?
I would do grad school again for this profession. But if I, by some, what's so funny is I almost missed my interview day because of a freak snowstorm here in Las Vegas.
Mm.
I happened to be traveling for work and the airport was closed and I was not going to make it back from my interview. And to this day, I'm like, was that supposed to be some kind of divine intervention, a sign that I missed? Because yeah, frankly, if you could tell me all of that happened, I would just go somewhere else. I would take my money and go to a program that has a legitimate focus on intersectionality, which they do exist. I don't know them I don't know. I don't have personal experience with those programs, but I did a lot of research after the fact, and there are those programs out there that legitimately include intersectionality as part of an intentional part of the curriculum. So no, I would not go to this program again. I don't think I need to have, some of the individual folks appear to have grown quite a bit, um, and present themselves very differently now. I'm really glad for them. I'm not interested in being in connection with them because I had to be collateral damage in their journey to wokeness. And I don't need that. Right. And so, yeah. And if I had a chance to do this again, no, I would not go to that program again. I would go somewhere else.
Mm.
And I would go somewhere else because I don't need this trauma. I already have it.
Yeah.
I didn't need it compounded.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just, you mentioned that there are other programs, and honestly, the lay of the land is changing quite a bit. Programs are rewriting their curriculums and all of that and changing training for professors. And that does not mean that things are going to be perfect, but a lot is different than when we started.
Yeah.
And it's also true that, again, if we're speaking from a systems perspective, there was collateral damage for that to happen, right? Not just folks within programs saying things about what happened, but also like the general, like, some racial reckoning in the United
Right.
States, right? That like
Right.
the increased focus on race and intersectionality is actually what is driving, what has driven systemic change. But we're
Yeah.
also now swinging back in the other direction
Yeah.
as that orange head man is entering the office, and maybe would have by the time this episode airs. But like everything is a reaction. And I would like to see clinical programs hold on to
Yeah.
the results of the collateral damage, right?
Yeah.
People had to die for that to happen, and
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
not drama.
and also just to really drive home this point, all of this was going on during the
Or
height
yes.
of the well, the pandemic is still ongoing, but the initial, right?
Mhm.
Like I started my program in September 2019.
Right?
We went fully virtual late February, early March 2020. Like right. So
Yeah,
so
your
it was
program
all of that.
overlapped with that.
Yeah, I am a COVID therapist. I grew my first client was in May or June 2020,
Mhm.
fully virtual because there was no other way.
Yeah, and it changes the work. Everything changed the work. Everything changed the work.
Exactly.
Um, Before we sort of close this part of the conversation, is there anything that you wanted to add? Do you feel complete, at least for now?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I do. I mean, I guess just you experienced anything like that or probably way worse or anything, you know, it does get better. I'm thriving. I have the clients I want. And some of them are even white. And guess what? I do great work with them too because
Yes.
systemic oppression affects them too.
Exactly. Yes. And
Um,
yes, that's a point that I don't want to lose, right? Like what you were saying, how things were set up was affecting everyone. And that
yeah.
was true in my program too, and true of so many people who I know have had pretty awful stories. And they were not all folks of color, right? They
Mm-mm.
may be neurodivergent or queer, or fill in the blank, right? And so if you've had any of these experiences, we do encourage you, if you feel comfortable, writing in. If you want us to share anything, we'll do it anonymously if you'd like, but we'd love the opportunity to air additional stories if people want them heard. Um, so, with that said, we are going to, as usual, practice what we preach and remind you to pause. So we are going to either take a deep breath, or for those who find that dysregulating, just put your hand on your stomach or your heart, locate your heartbeat or locate your breath, and take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. You can cycle through that one more time. In 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. And if you are locating your heart, you just feel it beating in your chest. All right. So we're going to move on to our moments of joy and thriving. So Blanca, any moments of joy and or thriving for you this week?
Oof. This week, moments of joy or thriving. Yes, I've been building some Lego sets. That's been a lot of fun. I don't want to say which ones.
You don't want to what?
I don't want to say which ones.
Why not?
We'll censor it out. Harry Potter.
Uh,
Oh, I guess a small one because small ones matter too. I found this app, which I'm not going to name unless they pay us to. uh,
Wait, are
have
you
you heard of?
gatekeeping resources though?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Good point. Good point. It's called Finch, and
Yeah,
it's this little
I
self
use
care
Finch.
app. Yeah, I'm on Finch, and so it's really helped me keep my space tidy. So I highly recommend that app, Finch, and we'll cut out the part where I said I won't say their name unless they're.
No,
But
it
yeah,
could be our blooper.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah, pay us. We love your app. So it's
yeah,
helped me really stay organized.
I've dropped off using Finch only because it felt like another thing that I had to manage to check in with. So I just ported some of the habits that it encourages, like just into my own life. So a lot of automating, but it's very cute. It's very cute.
Yeah.
It took me forever to reach a teenager, though.
Oh yeah, mine's not a toddler yet. Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What about some joy and thriving for you?
Ah, man. I mean, I feel like it's kind of the same as the last episode because I'm still doing a lot more reading than I used to, and it's interfering with my sleep hygiene because then I'm like
Ah,
in bed reading until I'm like falling asleep, and I have to tell myself, "Girl, go to bed." Like you
yep.
don't know what happened here. Um, so that there's that, and then the other is a new video game comes out this week. It's Dynasty Warriors Origins. All of the folks who love Dynasty Warriors have mixed feelings about what they've decided to do with the main protagonist. But that aside, I've been playing this game since I was like in middle school,
Whoa.
and they've brought back some of the things I love about the older games, and I have pre-ordered it, and it comes out later this week. So
How fun.
yeah, so I'm looking forward to maybe playing a little bit of that, and I restarted my Pilates this morning.
Fun. I love Pilates.
Yes, yes. So that is those are
Yay.
my moments.
Awesome. Well, definitely let us know some of your moments of joy and thriving somewhere
Yes,
on where you can comment. But please join us for our next episode as we
yes,
continue our journey in the call to healing.
yes. All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on our journey. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Please leave us a review and subscribe. You can email us at calltohealingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Call to Healing. Sign up for our mailing list, book us for speaking engagements and consulting, or donate to support this endeavor at our one-time donation link in the show notes. You can find even more goodness from us on Patreon at patreon.com/calltohealing. Keep in mind our views are our own and do not represent any organization we may be a part of. Even though we're both clinicians, listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship or clinical contract. If you hear anything that resonates with you in crisis, please seek the help of a trusted provider or the resources provided on our social media page. And remember, you're made for more than just healing. You're made to thrive. Until next time, rest easy.